terms of the age. It is now possible. 30 years ago when we were surveying, there was no scope for establishing chronology. And where from they came, because I said migrations played an important role, whether they came from upland area or they were moving along the coastal tracts and then settled down at some point which were favorable for human settlement and so on. And what was the nature? What is the nature of evidence? Like I have shown you, we do get evidence of early Stone Age hand axes, cleavers, and then the Middle Stone Age plague tools. Not enough evidence about Upper Paleolithic, but abundant Mesolithic and then Iron Age sites and so on. So what are the timelines? I said it goes back to 2 million years more than 2 million years in Africa, and now we have dates for earliest settlements going back to 15 lakh years in southeast coast at Athirambakkam and 12 lakh years in northern Karnataka at a site called Visampur. So there are typological similarities, technological comparability suggests that yes, even these early Stone Age sites in Goa or anywhere along the west coast could be as old as what we have in the east coast. So this cannot be ruled out. So that, but we need a context to establish firmly at that particular site. Otherwise, generally, human colonization of the Indian subcontinent took place 1.5 million years ago or even earlier, possible. And the routes of migration are very important. And if you follow the routes, suggested routes identified by archaeologists as we go north-northwest, they will likely to be older. And in Pakistan today, we have some sites which go back to 2 million years or so. But then these tool types are different in different geographical environments and so on. So the geological formations, which I briefly mentioned, the most important requirement for archaeologists or prehistorians is the presence of tractable raw material. I said it should be siliceous limestone, it should be quartzite, it should be sandstone, it should be chert, again jasper and things like that. So these are very hard rocks and high quality rocks are also there. And if they are present here, we narrow down our search. We go to those areas where such rock outcrops are there, either in the form of rock outcrops or in the form of pebbles and cobbles in the river lake deposits or alluvial fans along the escarpment flow, base of the Western Ghat escarpment and things like that. So that is where we were successful when we began to look for similar sites in the Dudhsagar region. They were associated with the alluvial fans. They have been reported as the river gravels, no doubt, but when we understand the landscape evolution, we know that they are not necessarily laid by the rivers, but by the slope retreat processes. Escarpment, is withdrawing, going, backwards. So that gives rise to cobbles and mass wasting activity, and they are deposited at the base, foot of the escarpment and so on. And at the same time, the drainage, there are three major rivers here. Of course, Mandovi and Zoari are the two major rivers, and their tributaries, they all originate in the plateau here. They flow eastwards, follow the general trend of the landscape slope, and then other processes which are governed the nature of drainage here. But as I said, archaeologists would like to follow the rivers because the exposures are along the banks of the rivers. We always thought it is easy, but now we know that you don't have to follow only the river courses, go into inland areas, locate such places where raw material resources are there, you are likely to find if they are there. And the drainage generally is an important aspect of our survey plan. But in addition to that, we go away from the rivers into the foothill areas. And then as you can see here, we have these sites in the it may not be exactly upper reaches because upper reaches is in the Western Ghats. But as it comes down, we call it middle reaches, and we have these 3 or 4 sites where typical hand axes and cleavers have been found. So these different divisions, earlier subdivisions and modern subdivisions and so on. The sites which were located in a district which was much larger, now the sites are redistributed in a new district separating the larger into 2 or something like that. But anyway, North Goa is yet to be systematically surveyed, whereas Southern Goa has received considerable attention, but it requires continuous effort. And these are some of the tools which we found along these rivers, like we have Sonwal, and then Kollam and Sigao, Bimbal, Tamdi Surla, and Kurdi, and Niranchal and Kazur. These some 8 sites we were able to discover, but these were not known previously. Only later period, Little Paleolithic and then occasional Mesolithic sites were known. So this was the one which we could add to the archaeological database for this particular region. And then as we moved away from the foothill areas towards the coastal tracts, upland, promontories and so on, what we saw was dense occurrence of Mesolithic sites. And in addition to that, we have these lateritic caves. And one of the caves was very potential. We also investigated there. And these are some of the gravels exposed in the riverbed today. And they are considered as river deposits. But they are not actually river deposits. They are the colluvial gravel fans, and which are now exposed by the modern day drainage. So this understanding we could, and what they have done, surfaces which were previously exposed were occupied by humans. They made use of these cobbles and pebbles, made this kind of tool, and then geomorphological processes buried them, and then later channel incision, what we call in the last 10 to 15,000 years, has cut down the deposits that was capping these formations, and this surface is now here and there you begin to get evidence of stone tools and so on. A close-up of one of those, this is the fluvial deposit and this is the gravel deposit. So they are not the sediments which were deposited by modern day Dudhsagar or its tributaries. These are part of the landscape evolution. These are colluvial sheets, and then later when fluvial activity increased, they started depositing what we call fine-grained sediment or suspended load. Now the river has cut this down and they exposed this particular gravel body, and we have found in these gravels we embedded Stone Age tools and so on. So some of these large cutting tools you can see flake scars and then the working edge and so on, and typical hand axes, large and medium size. This is a ovate. This is an elongated pointed tool with a long sharp cutting edge made from a tabular piece of quartzite. This was perhaps made from a cobble or a pebble grade quartzite. And then we have this kind of edge. This we call a cleaver. So this is intersection of two flake scars. There is one small flake scar here, and the other side, ventral side, is a long flake scar and a long flake surface. So they intersect and give rise to this kind of a working edge. We call it a cleaver. So this is a transverse cleaver, and this is a kind of a knife with a back here, and this was the cutting edge. So now, because several lakhs of years ago they were made and exposed to the surface, they have suffered some kind of weathering, alteration by natural processes. So they are not mint fresh in a way. So that also gives us an idea of their antiquity and so on. And then numerous examples along these 4 or 8 sites that we mentioned earlier have been found. These collections are in my museum, where I established a museum. I did not leave them behind anywhere. I wanted to see that they are protected and convince people as and when it is required that there are these early Paleolithic sites in Goa. They are very well documented and on display in the Robert Bruce Foote Museum in Bellary and so on. So other large flake tools that we come across with the sharp cutting edge and so on, and then the smaller tools. Even there we see the evolution from large Acheulean hand axes to smaller and smaller hand axes and so on. So this technological change also we see. And then we come across, as we come towards the western coast, see the density of sites. These are all hunter-gatherer, we call them, so now we have called them Mesolithic sites. They are hunter-gatherer, fisher, forager communities who were widespread in this ecosystem, called coastal ecosystems, exploiting aquatic resources as well as forest food resources, and then game animals for hunting, etc. We listed some 50, and I know there are many more. There may be several hundred of these microlithic sites, and these are all, as I said, small diminutive blades, burins, and then you have backed blades, micro blades, and then triangles, trapezes, lunates, and things like that. They were used as composite tools, and they were made from cryptocrystalline mineral rocks like chalcedony, chert, agate, and so on. They are high quality raw materials. Their efficiency is higher, their durability is also higher, and that is where we see abundant. Unfortunately, after 1994, we could not come back, and now that we have a new paradigm with respect to looking at these kind of microlithic sites, the younger generation should be able to go back and identify some intact microlithic sites. And some of those caves which we excavated may also be systematically excavated and so on.